Hi, welcome to Abby's Den. I'm Abby and welcome to part 4 of this sew along. We're making a waistcoat. It's pattern 8023 from Simplicity. So in part 1 we deciphered the pattern and we understood. The second part we moved on to cutting out the pattern pieces, identifying what we needed to do, and then we marked all the pieces in the third part and cut out the interfacing. And it's all ready now. My sewing machine, I've got all my pattern pieces laid out. You can see here I have my ironing board with the correct pieces I need to have with me to make sure my ironed pieces are going to be nice and crisp. We want a really good waistcoat. I have the most essential things over there in the corner, my cup of tea and a secret jar of treats. That's just between you and me. We're not going to share that secret with anybody else. So that's right. So let's start with the sewing directions. So here you can see the fabric key for all the images. Can you see how some are darker, some have got hash images on them? If we see the piece like this, we're looking at the interfacing there. So when we see the piece like this and it's white, we're dealing with the wrong side of the fabric. The layout there, so you can understand it a little bit better in real form. All right, the instructions tell us to go straight through to the general directions on page 1, which we've done in part 2. I think we went through it. Have a look back in the previous videos. It talks about the interfacing, but it doesn't, which we have already done here. Okay, so fusing means glue it. So glue it to place through manufacturer's directions. And manufacturer's directions don't come with your interfacing, you just buy it. So then place the glue side of the interfacing onto my wrong side of the fabric, so that's the good side there. On the wrong side, iron, I use a hot iron, I use a little bit of steam to help, and that will help boost the energy. So it doesn't heat it up anymore, it just feels hotter, so it helps melt the glue onto there. If you buy a good quality one, it should glue. You shouldn't get any ripples. If you find you're getting ripples, you've used a substandard quality interfacing, and maybe you should consider buying a better quality. So once you've got the interfacing fused in place, following the manufacturer's directions, it tells us that the pattern pieces will be identified by the numbers the first time they are used. So can you see how it's used? Number 1 is there. And we know that's number 1 because it's got the front colour on there. There's number 1 over there, but they've not used the number. Back to the front here, where all the numbers are on the images of the shapes. And just systematically go round and number them. So let's go through the instructions. 1. Apply interfacing to the front, and that's piece 1. So we can tick that off. Stay stitch the front and back, the neck edges 1/2 of an inch, so that's 1.3 centimeters from the cut edge in direction of arrows. Now if I don't stay stitch this, what will happen is we can distort the fabric and it can misshapen, and we don't want that. What happens is you cause those ripples way before you start sewing the pieces together. So before I've put the front and the back together and I've created my waistcoat without stay stitching, and if all those pieces are distorted, when you've made your waistcoat, you will find that you get a very distorted neckline, and that will be so disappointing for you after all the effort you've made. Your sewing machine doesn't have the markings, or the markings don't have numbers on them, what you can do is get your needle right down so it goes through the hole, and then push your ruler to the guide marks. So I can see now where the 1.3 or the 1/2 inch line is, and that's on there. If I've got the machine set to its left straight stitch, the needle will give me 5/8 of an inch there. But if I have it centered, which I prefer to do, I can place the needle all the way down, and the 5/8 inch line is actually 1/2 inch from the needle. I'm going to place my seam guide on the first line there, on the 5/8. That'll give me 1/2 inch. I start from the bottom and place the needle down. I'm going to have a stitch length of 3. I'm not going to lock the stitches, but I will go slowly. And then stop. Okay, and there we go. So we're starting at the bottom on all of them. I'll go through all pieces now. And if I start at the bottom this time, I'm going to have to start on the right side. So make sure that's there. And when I get to the pivot, stop there, and then and there we go. And there's my next line. With the back piece like this, if I need to start from the shoulder, I'll have to start from the front side. Oops. Let's go. And we at the end, stop and trim the thread. And there you go. I am sewing this satin fabric, so I'm going to be using a smaller needle, a size 60. When I go back to sewing with the denim, I'm going to be using a regular 80. So we start from the shoulder and press foot down. And let's go. The reason why I've changed the needle is because I don't want any puckering in my fabric, skip stitches or snags in my fabric. So can you see there? No skip stitches, no snags, although there is a little bit of bump up there, so I'm going to reduce the tension just a little bit. Let's go for this. So I've reduced the tension just a tiny bit. There we go. And help the fabric along, so you're not forcing it and you're allowing the feed dogs to feed it through at its own rate. So now all the pieces have been stay stitched and are waiting. We're ready to move on to the next stage. To make the darts in front with the right sides together, fold the fabric through the centre of the dart, bringing the broken lines and smaller dots together. Then on the inside, place pins at right angles to the broken lines and stitch the dart from the wide end to the point. Fold it with right sides together. So if I fold the pattern over like this, so you can see the dart, if I put that dot, that cross right in the centre, I'm going to press it with my finger. Don't do this in pen, because if you use a lighter colour, it might come through. I'm going to get that point there and make sure I squeeze on that point, and then the two ends can you sort of match up there, and you'll see a magic trick. I always think it's magic when this works out. I can pop a pin in there for a moment as well, right at the top, because I'm happy with where that meets. Then we have another spot here. Okay, so I'm going to put that through the first cross there. And I'm going to make sure it comes out with the cross at the back, like that, which it does. Then I'm going to come up through the line there and make sure it comes out on the line there, and in theory it should, and in actual fact it has. So if you want to, you can place them going across now, and and put them, don't need to have so many. What we'll do, so run needle and thread through there. I've got a double thread, and just catch, making sure you catch the line underneath like that. Move that pin. So I'm using a Schmetz needle, it's a size 80. Let's grab our dart, let's sew that, starting from the bottom, start on the line. I'm going back, make sure my stitch length is on 2.5. I'm returning the tension back to default. Lock the stitches at the front. Of that, I'm going to remove pins as I come to them. I go nice and slow, and I want to aim to finish really close on that dot, so I'm getting really close to the edge and I'm at the fold. I stopped exactly where the spot is. So what I'm going to do is pull the needle out, and I'm going to pull the fabric so that I've got a nice long length there. Cut that there, and I'm going to tie a couple of knots. There we go. Should we do one for good measure? An extra one for good measure. There we go. Right, so I've got my ham. I'm going to place the fabric on top like that. Now it's the pattern. Now the pattern asks for the dart to be placed towards the centre. What does that mean? So the centre is, well, they're the side seams, and that's the front. So that's known as the centre front of a pattern. So what we do is we lay the dart towards the centre. And I'm going to press that away, that way. I'm going to use the clapper to sort of help give a nice crisp finish. See how it sits nicely that way. Hams are really good for giving shape. Just give it a tug. So on the pattern we have this line here, the welt line. That's where the welt will actually be placed, and it's broken. When you put the pattern, so when you put the dart in, what happens is you bring those broken lines together and you end up with one straight line. That line needs to be transferred to the front because that's where we actually need to see it. But let me show you, if you do a good dart, you should get an almost invisible blending. There is going to be shape there. That's the whole point of the dart. That's why it looks a little bit rounded. That's what we want. Our bodies are curved and we allow for that. And that's what you should be aiming for. It's almost, you can't tell where the dart finishes. Right, so I've just got 3 more to do.